Today, we look at a prominent heavyweight contender of the late 1800s. How good was the king of the battle royal, Bob Armstrong? Bob Armstrong was born on September 4, 1873, in Rogersville, Tennessee. Armstrong stood 6 feet 4 with a 79-inch reach. He had an aggregate weight of 191 pounds for his career. Armstrong's career spanned from 1894 to 1904. He had 17 wins, 10 losses, and 5 draws. He also had one no-contest bout. 15 of his wins were by knockout. His win percentage was 51, and his knockout percentage was 45. Armstrong got his nickname, King of the Battle Royal, due to a brutal and racist carnival act of placing blindfolded African American men and boys in a ring to beat each other senseless for the comedic pleasure of the audience and in the hopes of winning a few dollars. Armstrong was a sizable heavyweight and got his boxing start after working in racehorse stables. Despite his size, Armstrong wasn't a very aggressive fighter but sparred with many of the best heavyweights during his time, which helped to shape his fighting skills. Armstrong would get his first major test in his first fight on September 19, 1894. He took on Hall of Fame heavyweight Joe Choynski. Choynski was one of the best fighters in the world, though smaller than Armstrong. Choynski was able to outbox Armstrong for a 6-round decision victory. Some sources also reported the fight as a draw. On November 5, 1895, Armstrong took on Australian heavyweight Frank Slavin. Armstrong would secure his first career victory via 10th-round knockout. The two men would rematch a year later, on November 23, 1896. Armstrong would dominate Slavin en route to a 4th-round TKO victory. On December 12, 1896, Armstrong would take on Charlie Strong in a fight billed as the Colored Heavyweight Championship, as Peter Jackson had relinquished the belt he held for several years while pursuing a fight with John L. Sullivan. Armstrong would power his way to a 19th-round knockout, securing his claim to the Colored Heavyweight Championship. After knocking out well-traveled contender Joe Butler on March 6, 1897, Armstrong would take on an underrated black heavyweight from the era, Frank Childs, the very next day. Though Armstrong was much larger than the 5'9" Childs, he was unable to secure a victory as Childs boxed his way to a points win over the 6 rounds. Armstrong and Childs would rematch on January 29, 1898, in Chicago, with the fight being billed for the Colored Heavyweight Championship. Childs would land a huge right hand in the 2nd round that sent Armstrong to the canvas, out cold. Frank Childs became the new Colored Heavyweight Champion. After rematch wins over Charlie Strong and Joe Butler in March and May of 1898, Armstrong would be matched with heavyweight contender Mexican Pete Everett. The smaller Everett needed 5 rounds to knock out Armstrong. On August 5, 1898, Armstrong would face off with future world heavyweight champion, the Boilermaker, James J. Jeffries, in New York. The two men were also sparring partners. Jeffries, who was a year away from winning the world heavyweight title, thoroughly outboxed Armstrong for a 10-round points win. After a rough and dirty draw with Australian heavyweight contender Joe Goddard in August of 1898, Armstrong took on Mexican Pete Everett in a return bout. The larger Armstrong maintained condition and picked up a TKO win over Everett in the 15th round. Armstrong would step back into the ring with Frank Childs in a shot at the Colored World Heavyweight Championship on March 4, 1899. Armstrong would fare not much better than the previous contests as the more skilled Childs forced a 6th-round stoppage to retain the title. Armstrong would face debuting Denver Ed Martin in his next fight on June 6, 1899. Martin was around the same size as Armstrong. Armstrong made quick work of Martin in this fight, knocking him out in the 2nd round. On March 23, 1900, Armstrong would rematch Denver Ed Martin, fighting to a draw in a relatively uneventful fight. After a year away from the ring, Armstrong would return to step in with Martin again, this time in London on July 25, 1902, with the Colored World Heavyweight title on the line. Martin, who had since remained unbeaten, would thoroughly outbox Armstrong to win a wide 15-round decision. The two men would again lace up the gloves in December of 1902 in a fast-paced 6-round contest that saw both fighters hurt or on the canvas on multiple occasions. Both would survive, but Armstrong got the worst of it as he lost the decision. After a February 1903 no contest with George Gardner, Armstrong would face Denver Ed Martin for the final time in their rivalry on June 10, 1903. In a quick-paced fight, a left hook to the body from Armstrong sent Martin down and out for the count in the third round. Armstrong would go 2-2 in his final 4 matches before hanging up the gloves for good in 1904. Armstrong never got a shot at the vaunted World Heavyweight Championship due to the times. Armstrong faced 2 Hall of Famers. His most notable fights were against Hall of Famer Joe Choynski, Charlie Strong, Frank Childs, Hall of Famer James J. Jeffries, Denver Ed Martin, and Mexican Pete Everett. Bob Armstrong died on January 5, 1933, at 59. Armstrong won't receive any accolades and has been largely forgotten, but he played a critical role as a contender in the early days of boxing as we know it now. His work behind the scenes, particularly as a sparring partner for many top fighters, is where he shined. Also, he shall forever remain the king of the battle royals.